So we made this mask here for this snow mask, well, snow cover rather. I'm going to get another levels node here because I want to put function on it, and I kind of want to keep it separate. And I'm looking at my notes, the best way to set this up. Let's get our water puddles cut out, because that's the only thing that's actually going to be completely cut out according to this mask. And I'm going to want them black. So what I'm going to do is apply this as a mask and then put this as the background. And because it's grayscale, it's going to interpret this empty spot as black, and it'll apply it on top. So that's my pond stuff cut out. And I'm going to make a quick, let's make a quick color for it. So let's get a gradient node. We'll adjust this later on, but I want to get the mask right away, and we may as well do this. That should be okay for now. And let's quickly test what we have so far. So that's it covering the entire thing. And I don't have full coverage because we have some white areas in here, some gray areas in here. So that's going to have to get adjusted. But we're going to be making a completely different mask, so I'm not worried about that now. But these edges of the pond look good, and it's matching. It's looking matchy with the snow that we have going on, on the water itself. So far, so good. But the secret sauce here is all in the, it's in the mask and the way we're going to manipulate this node here. You'll notice that as we move our levels nodes, we can get stuff to happen with that color that we're overlaying on it. Okay, I think that's a good place to start. I wanted to get this mid-level where I needed it. This is actually running backwards. We're going to be putting a function on this level in low. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click empty function. And again, it's going to be associated with our snow variable. But because it's running backwards, we're going to have to invert it. And we're going to do that by subtracting it from 1. So now it's actually moving according to the slider. But I'm not digging the amount of coverage I'm getting. I'm not worried. I'm only really looking at the coverage I'm getting on the ground itself. We're going to take care of the rocks differently a little bit. But it looks like it's kind of a dusting right now on full, and that's not what I want. So we're going to adjust for that now. But when you do that, you also affect stuff at the bottom end of the slider, and so we have to go back and constantly check to make sure that it looks the way we want it to look all up and down the slider. And again, I'm only really looking at what's going on in the ground here. And I want to see a couple of things. I want to see that I get nice shapes what's going on here? Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Okay. Let's not do it on this one. No, first of all, let's finish this up. I was actually going to do it a different way, partially because of this. I'm going to add another float in here, and we're going to use an addition. And this is going to help us fine tune this because it's going to let us add stuff we're working backwards here. So I had, in my notes, I had 0.043, so we'll start with that. And it's going to help prevent that flip from happening. And then the other thing we can do is, actually that probably looks all right. Come back in here. See, I'm looking at this 0.5 mark, and I kind of want this to already start to have some holes in there. I'm going to come back into this one and maybe do a little bit of work in here. Because this one's static, it's in a way it's easier to deal with. Okay, so I'm not getting quite full coverage on the color there, so I'm going to come back in here and move this down just to... All right, that's looking pretty good through the top half of the scale. Okay, getting there. So we just got these little bits to get rid of. And I think for that, let's come up in here. I'm a little worried about that. Let's see. I don't know if that's going to flip for us again. Yep. Okay, so that works. Now, these rocks are getting like evenly covered, but that's what the next part's all about. So what we've got to do now is cut out in an aesthetically pleasing way some of the snow off of the rock area. And, you know, you can, I think I'm going to use this mask because it's got the most detail. But, you know, pick a mask that you like. And again, I'm only looking at the rock. This we're going to cover up. Pick a normal. I mean, I'm doing it from normal to height. So pick one that you like the way this grayscale looks. I like the fact that I've got areas on top where I can keep some snow. And then these darker areas here, we can actually use a levels node to get it to look more like what we want as far as having areas of patchiness in through the stones here. So I'm going to bring this down here. But the problem is that, you know, it's all over the place. So we're going to actually have to cut out an area. So what we're going to do here is create a mask for this snow that we've put the input parameter on. And as luck would have it, we've already made one right here. And this is exactly why I made this mask, because it's going to give us these tops. I'm going to grab a levels node. We'll put that in there, and we'll bring it down to... Oh, you know what? Let's... we want it inverted, I just realized. So I'm going to highlight this noodle. I'm going to come into my library, get an invert grayscale, and I'm just going to pop it right up on there. And now I have it set up the way I want. And we want to take this and combine it with this. And we're going to do it, I think, this way. See how this looks with a light and blend. I mean, you can make this mask however you want. You can, you know, cut stuff out and do it the other way. I think I'm going to do it like this. Let's see how this looks. Yeah. So the only issue I'm having with it now is that I'm not seeing enough of this. I want to see more of it. So now all I need to do is come into this levels. Actually, I'm going to double click on my blend and I'm going to single click on my levels. And we can now adjust this. And that gives us a pretty good mask, I think. And we'll get another blend node. And we'll use that as a mask. And this is our foreground, and we plug it in to our final, and it's cut out some nice rocks for us. You know, and depending what you want, I'm actually pretty pleased with this. Depending on what you want, you can set it up, you know, to look exactly like you want by using this mask. And let's see how it looks with our input parameter. I think I want more actual true blacks in here. I'm going to put a levels node onto this grayscale so we can actually adjust what's going on inside here a little bit more. Yeah, I think I'm happier with that. And I'm still getting, I want a thicker snow. I mean, all we're getting right now is the color, but I want more, I want it whiter. And the problem was that, you know, we were getting, because this was getting kind of gray up in here. Let's see if our slider still works, because every time you touch this node with the function on it, you know, everything affects everything else. So you just want to keep making sure that it's doing what you expecting it to do, and it's not. So, you know what? I'm going to do this a different way. Let's back out of this. So we're back to where we were. This is kind of gray here. And I'm going to leave this alone for the coverage. I think I'm going to see whether or not I can't change it in the color. Yeah, this is where I'm having a problem. Well, for starters, let's plug this into something. That's my problem. I forgot to plug that in. That was, the reason this was happening is this gradient map wasn't functioning properly because it had nothing, it had no input in it. Now it's giving me the colors that I want. So my deeper areas, I've got a slightly darker blue, and then I've got, is that a blue-white? No, it's a red-white. Okay, we're going to change that to a bluish-white. Okay. And my other problem is this right here. I've got to black out, well, I've got to white out rather these areas of snow, because this is what I think I mentioned earlier, that I had tested it this way, and when I had an ambient occlusion in the snow, it kind of made it look dirty. Which is what it's doing now. I want the snow to look kind of dirty around the rocks. I don't want it to look dirty where there are no rocks. So we need to block out those areas here in this ambient occlusion. And I think the simplest way to do that is just switch out. Right now we're just putting white over the water. We can kind of do the same thing. We're going to have to add them because they aren't, one does not necessarily go over the other. So let's do them in the same order. Oh, this might be even simpler. You know what we're going to do? We're going to put, no. What we're going to do, we're going to put another blend node in here. And we are going to overlay this, and we're going to use a lighten blend. Except we want the exact opposite. So we're going to come in here, we're going to get this invert grayscale, and now it looks like we want it to look. So we're getting the ambient occlusion from in here. Next step, we're inverting this mask, and we're just whiting out any AO that is in this snowy ground here. And then we're doing the same thing and whiting out any AO that might be in the water areas. Yeah, sorry for that confusion. I just noticed that, and that's something that we missed earlier on. But that's our ambient occlusion taken care of. And now this snow doesn't look dirty anymore. I was wondering, I knew there was something wrong, couldn't quite figure it out. And, you know, there are dirty areas in near the rocks, which makes sense. The water ice looks a little blue. That's just a question of getting the colors to match up on our gradient maps. And I think all I'm going to do here is just take some of this blue out and get it to be a little bit more white. There, problem solved. And again, I'm not going to obsess about the color on these gradient maps, because at this point all of our things are looking completely different. I'm absolutely certain of it. Let's make sure our slider still works. All right. Okay, we're almost there. Now all we need to do is make a set of, maps for normals, etc. for our snow. Let's start by organizing. Let's start with the normals. Right now, we've got the color and the masking working okay, but that's all it's really doing, is it's changing the color, and the normals are staying exactly the same. It's using the ground normals, and it has no height. We're going to get a bevel node, because that's going to give us, that normal height. But what we also need is a different normal that's going to, be different from what we have here going on in the ground. And I like this one right here. This, I think it's called crystals, the ones we used for the cracks, because it's more geometric. Well, it's crystalline, which is really what snow is, but it's like way, way, way too big. And I don't want to have to use it, I don't have to drag out a second one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a Transform 2D, and that's the version that we're going to use down here for the snow. And you can make it whatever size you want. I tiled it pretty high. I hit by half 5 times, which ends up being a 32 tile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're turning it into a noise, but it's a nice noise because it's kind of got that wiggly thing going on, and it's too dark. So we're going to need a levels node. No, let's keep it gray. And then this gradient that I guess at some point I used it as a placeholder because I really don't want this mask on here. Let's replace it. We're going to do that. So we're going to use this for our color, and we're going to use it for our normal. I'm going to get a height to normal, and I'm going to get a blend. So this is going to be the surface of our snow. So it doesn't have to be super deep. We can start there. We'll once we get it up in here, we can fine tune that. And then we need to get a bevel that's going to give us the outlines of our snow. So this final mask here is what I'm going to use for that. And now I'm thinking about, like the little mini snowdrifts. They're like super sharp right now, but again, we'll sort that out in a minute. But I'm liking that. That's kind of a good size. And we'll use an overlay blend. And let's take a look and see what that is going to look like in the renderer. So we'll get a blend node. We'll run this in as the background. This is going to be in the foreground, and we're going to get a mask in a minute to deal with that. And there we go. So those look like pretty sharp sort of snowbanks, or little, just the way snow blows. But the nice thing about having a bevel node is it's got a smoothing component to it. So we can get those bevels to look a lot more like little snowdrifts with the new normal texture put on top. The only problem is it's all over the place. So we now have to cut out those areas where it's not going to be snow. And this is the logical map to use, because this is the large area cutouts, that we then put more detail into. So I'm going to use this as a start, and we're going to add to it. Let's bring that a little bit closer in here. So this has gotten rid of the areas here in this map. So it's already starting to look better. We've got our rock normals back. We haven't cut out the water yet. So we're going to have to, again, we're going to have to add into this right here, this noodle that we've just created, I guess the simplest way to do it is to make a blend in here. I'm going to need an inverted version. Do we already? No, we don't already have an inverted version. So we're going to take this mask for the puddles. We're going to invert it. Oops. I didn't mean to do that. I inverted the one that I was already using. I'm going to have to drag it into this. Oh, God. Let's try that again. Okay, so we've uninverted what we just did before, and now we have an inverted version, and we're going to plug it in here. And we're going to use a darken blend. So it's going to just bring up all the black areas from both of those maps combined. And now we have cut out all the areas that we don't want to have these snowdrifts on them. It's looking pretty happy. I'm actually pretty pleased with this. I mean, it looks very different from the original that I made, but that's the way these things work. But it's got its own quality happening. And we can bring this back where it belongs because I think we're happy with the map. Let's make sure the slider looks good. I'm not, there's something going on with this mask that I'm not happy with. That's fine. Yeah, this is the problem here. Yeah, okay, here's the problem. What we're using for this normal, we want these details in this normal map. Actually, we probably don't really need it. We can, I think we, okay, here's what's going on. There's a lot of gray in this mask, which is why it's affecting the color, because it's the same one that we're using for this bevel is what we're using for the color. I'm thinking that for the bevel, we don't need these gray areas, and I'm going to try it out on both of them. Let's see if we can't use the same one for both. So I've highlighted this. I'm going to put a levels node on it, and it'll certainly work for the color. That's our color back to where we want it. But I'm wondering whether we also might not want to use it for the bevel because it might give us, it gives us a different bevel. You know, it really depends on how you want to do it. But the important thing was the color because the color was washed out. Yep, I think it's working now. Right, so we have our color, we have our normal. We're not going to have an ambient occlusion because it's snow. The next thing we want to deal with is our roughness, and I think we're going to go just straight off of here. Let's get an invert grayscale, and we'll get another levels. Even it up a bit, and then we're just going to take the whole thing down. And we need to make, I mean, for the color, we made a mask. And this is kind of an overlay, and all we're doing is cutting stuff out for the puddles. But for the remaining masks, we want to overlay, for example, a new roughness on top of the ground. And we want it to scale along with the drifts. And so we're going to actually use the height map from the bevel node to create the mask that we're going to be using for our snow. Well, we don't see anything right now because it's set to 0. So let's bring that up. And now we have full snow. I want maybe to adjust this a little bit, make it more masky, maybe like that. But again, we can fool around with that later. And now it's just a question of hooking these things up to the existing chains. So we're down to the roughness. Let's get another blend node, and we'll hook our mask up to it. And we'll put our snow roughness in the foreground and the existing stuff in the background and see what that looks like. Yeah, so that's very shiny. I think I don't mind the shininess. I think it's a little too even. So maybe like that, get a little bit more variety going on in the roughness. But, you know, it's supposed to be icy and shiny, and it's kind of doing that. The rocks are less shiny. We're not going, that's metallic. We're not going to have any metallic. And the last one down the line here is specular level. So we can kind of, you know, just do it straight off of this, since I kind of want it inverted. And this is inverted here, so we'll do it the opposite. And we'll get another blend node with this is the mask, this is the foreground, and we can bring it into this chain here. I think I'd like to tone that down just a bit. All right, what we don't have is scatter for this. So we'll make one more for the scatter map, and I think that will be us done. We're going to use this color, and we're just going to block out some of it. Now, right now I've got this set as an emissive, which doesn't really give me the effect that I want, but what it will allow me to do is to see whether I like the way it's, do I have the height set in here? Yeah, okay. It gives me a basic idea of how it's laid out. I think I want more. I'm going to do it from this one. I think it's showing up in here. Now it is, okay. And I'm going to just use an emissive channel right now to kind of guesstimate how I want to set this mask. I think I want it somewhere in between those two. I'm going to get another levels and just make a custom levels node for here. Yeah, kind of like that. And I'm just going to shut that down now. I mean, it does become distracting when you're looking at all the other stuff. So everything looks all right. My roughnesses are doing what they need to do. I think we're pretty much done in here. Yeah, you know, I just noticed something where we need to fix. We seem to have lost some of our rock normals. And, that's our problem right here. I messed up. I used this mask instead of using this mask. So let's just replace that. I'm going to highlight this node. So it's going to highlight that noodle for me. And I'm just going to replace it with this one. And that's good. So we've got our material done. It's looking pretty good. Let's run it through the slider one more time. I'm going to hook this up. You know, like I said, it doesn't have a specular in here, but if you need the specular channel, you have it built. And it's essentially, you know, anything that's going to have any kind of subsurface, so the grass and the snow and the water. But for now, I'm going to shut it off because I don't think it really works as an emissive in here. I mean, it's even, and it'll work in Unreal, for example, because that emissive has shown me how it's laid out. And I can, well, this is how, I'll just show you how I work it. So I can move this intensity up and down, and it gives me a good visual of what the scattering is going to look like. So I'm pretty confident with this. And, you know, I'll just turn it down to 0, and this way I don't have to worry about it. So one more time running the slider. I want to get a good angle on that water. Okay, so it's beginning to crust up. All right, well, I think it's done. So I hope that's been informative and enjoyable, and I'll see you in the next video.